I believe that pro-life and pro-choice are not good terms to use for the question of whether or not abortion should be legal. Okay? Because what we're talking about is whether or not abortion should be legal. Okay? And nobody is really against life. Much of the motivation for legalizing abortion was the idea that women are going to have abortions anyway, and they're going to commit suicide if they can't stand carrying a pregnancy to term. And so we might as well legalize abortion and make it as safe as we can. That was the reasoning behind it. Whether you agree with that reasoning or not, whether they were right or not, that was the reasoning. And it was not an anti-life or love of death that led to abortion being legalized. Now, the idea of pro-choice is very bizarre because there are a multitude of choices that are not controversial. There are a multitude of choices that are legal. And even if you go to pregnancy, okay, except for those women who are raped, which is indeed a tragedy and a heinous crime, we have the right to not engage in the type of sex that leads to pregnancy, which of course does not mean we don't engage in any type of sex. It means that we don't engage in that type of sex. If Elton John and Melissa Etheridge can have satisfying sex lives without that act, straights can too. Okay, and there are a lot of, but anyway, the whole idea of pro-choice, even people who want abortion outlawed, don't work against, saying they don't work against the choice to not get pregnant in the first place. They don't necessarily work against other, different ways of, they promote, what they tend to do is promote something called fertility awareness, which is, also has a failure rate, but is actually a pretty good way of avoiding getting pregnant in the first place. And even if you have no choice as to carry the pregnancy to term, there is still, if you have a baby and you're unable to care for the child, there is always the choice of placing for adoption. So I think this whole idea of pro-life and pro-choice does not work for me. Now, the people who want abortion outlawed, generally speaking, refer to anybody who wants abortion legal as pro-abort. Now, there are people who have waged campaigns against smoking, but they didn't demand that smoking or tobacco be outlawed. There are people who are strongly anti-drinking and speak out against drinking and are for temperance, but don't demand a return to prohibition, since prohibition obviously didn't work. So I really think we have to, one step in perhaps finding a resolution to this horrible issue is not to use terms that are very misleading